Let's talk about employee stock options, or ESOs. So many of us see them as just a nice perk, right? Kind of like a bonus. But honestly, that's a huge mistake. Think of them less like a bonus and more like a complex financial asset. And to really get the most out of them, you need a strategy. You need to manage them with the precision of a top-tier executive. So let's dive in and build that strategy together.
And I want you to think about this for a second. For a lot of people, especially in high-growth companies, your ESOs could be worth a life-changing amount of money. I mean, they could easily be your single biggest asset, even more than your house. And yet, it's the one we probably understand the least. You know, we check our 401k, we watch real estate prices, but our stock options? They just kind of sit there in a folder somewhere, completely unmanaged. Well, today, we're going to fix that. And here's how we're going to do it. We've laid out a clear strategic framework. First, we'll look at the big picture, the opportunity itself. Then, we're going to get our hands dirty and deconstruct your actual grant agreement. After that, we'll figure out what your options are really worth by solving the value equation. From there, we'll build a decision-making framework for that critical question, when to exercise. And finally, we'll put it all together so you can build your own personal strategic playbook.
Okay, let's get started with part 1, the ESO opportunity and framework. Before we jump into the nitty-gritty of tax implications and vesting schedules, we have to set the stage. We need to get the foundational concepts right so we can think about this strategically.
So first things first, what in the world is an employee stock option? Well, at its core, it's a contract. It gives you the right to buy a certain number of shares in your company. But, and this part is super important, it's not an obligation. You don't have to buy them. And the price you pay is locked in, that's your strike price, and you have a specific window of time, usually about 10 years, to decide if you want to make a move.
Now, let's just cut to the chase. In consulting, we call this the answer first principle. So here are the key things you absolutely have to understand. 1. ESOs are really just a tool companies use to get you in the door and convince you to stay. 2. There are two main flavors, ISOs and NSOs. And believe me, their tax rules are night and day different. 3. Your vesting schedule is what determines when you can actually act on your options. 4. The moment you exercise, yep, that's a taxable event. And finally, and this is the one most people miss, the value of your options is made of two parts, the obvious intrinsic value and the super important, often overlooked time value. We're going to break all of this down.
All right, on to part 2, deconstructing your grant. This is where we metaphorically pull out that grant agreement you signed when you were hired and actually learn to read it. It's all about understanding the specific language that governs your personal stake.
So the very first fork in the road is figuring out which kind of options you have. Are they ISOs or NSOs? Incentive stock options, or ISOs, are pretty sweet because they can give you a major tax break. We're talking lower long-term capital gains rates if you play by the rules. Then you have non-qualified stock options, or NSOs, which are way more common. The profit on these is taxed just like your salary, as ordinary income. Knowing which one you have is literally the foundation of your entire strategy.
Next up is vesting. You see, you don't get the right to exercise all your options on day 1. A really common schedule is a 4-year plan with a 1-year cliff. That cliff means you get absolutely nothing for the first 365 days. If you leave on day 364, you walk away with 0 options. But once you pass that 1-year mark, your options start to vest bit by bit until you hit that 4-year anniversary and you're 100% vested. It's how the company makes sure you stick around for the journey.
So if you were to look at your agreement right now, these are the core pieces of its DNA. The grantor, that's the company. You're the grantee. The strike price is that magic number, the price you get to buy shares at, no matter how high the stock goes. The vesting schedule is your path to ownership. And the expiration date, that's your absolute final deadline. If you don't act by then, poof, your options are gone for good.
Okay, part 3. This is where it gets really fun, solving the value equation. We know the rules of the game now, but what are these things actually worth? And I'll give you a hint, it's almost always more than you think.
The first part of that equation is easy. It's the intrinsic value. This is just the straightforward on-paper profit. If the stock is trading at, say, $50 a share and your strike price is $10, you have $40 of intrinsic value per option. Simple, right? And if the stock price is below your strike price, your intrinsic value is just 0. It can't go negative. This is what everybody focuses on.
But this is the secret weapon. It's called time value. This is the value of potential. Think about it. An option with 8 years left before it expires is way more valuable than one with only 8 days left, right?
There's just so much more time for the stock price to go up. And this value gets supercharged by volatility. The wilder the stocks ride, the higher the time value, because there's a better chance of a massive price swing in your favor.
So the full picture looks like this. It's a simple formula, but it's incredibly powerful. Your option's total value isn't just today's profit, it's that intrinsic value plus the forward-looking time value. And honestly, ignoring the time value component is probably the most expensive mistake you can make with your options.
Let's visualize this. Say the total theoretical value of one of your options is $40. The intrinsic value, the cash you could get right now, is $30. But there's another $10 of pure time value baked in. Now here's the kicker. If you exercise that option today, you capture the $30 for sure, but you completely forfeit that $10 of time value. It just evaporates. You're basically paying an opportunity cost to lock in your gains right now.
Which leads us perfectly into Part 4, your exercise decision framework. Because knowing what something is worth is one thing, but deciding when to act, well, that's a whole other ballgame. This isn't about finding one right answer. It's about analyzing a set of critical trade-offs.
And you can't make a smart decision without understanding the tax journey. When you first get your options, at the grant date, nothing happens tax-wise. It's a non-event. The big day is step 2, when you exercise. The moment you buy those shares, the IRS looks at that discount you got and says, aha, that's income, and you a tax on it. Then later on, when you actually sell the shares, that's step 3, and any additional profit is taxed as a capital gain. Let's walk through an example to make this real. Imagine you're ready to exercise 250 of your vested options. Right now, the stock is trading on the open market at $55 a share. So the market value of those shares is $13,750. But here's the magic of stock options. You don't pay that market price. Your grant agreement says you get to buy them at your fixed strike price of, let's say, $25 a share. So your total cash outlay to buy the shares is only $6,250. And that difference, that $7,500 discount you got, is what the IRS calls the bargain element. And guess what? They see it as income. So in the year you exercise, you will owe ordinary income tax on that $7,500, even if you haven't sold a single share to get cash. This is the infamous phantom income that can lead to a really nasty surprise tax bill if you aren't ready for it. So this all boils down to the classic early exercise dilemma. On one side, you have all the reasons to exercise early. You might want to lock in your gains, start that one-year clock so you can qualify for better long-term capital gains tax rates, or diversify your wealth so you're not overly exposed to one company's stock. But on the other side, there are powerful reasons to wait. You can defer paying that big tax bill, you can hold on to that valuable time value we just talked about, and you avoid having to come up with a bunch of cash to both buy the shares and pay the taxes. It's a true strategic trade-off, and what's right for you depends entirely on your situation. Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, Building Your Strategic Playbook. We've covered all the concepts and the frameworks. Now it's time to put it all into practice by asking yourself a few key questions. This is your personal decision-making checklist. First off, what's your cash situation? Do you need money for a down payment next year, or is this for retirement in 30 years? Your timeline changes everything. Second, what's your gut feeling about the company? Are you incredibly bullish on its future, or do you have some concerns? Be honest. Third, concentration risk. Is 90% of your net worth tied up in this one stock? If so, your risk level is through the roof. Fourth, go back to that time value. How much of it are you walking away from by exercising now? And finally, and this one is absolutely non-negotiable, have you talked to a tax professional? Everyone's situation is different, and getting advice tailored to you is critical. Because at the end of the day, it really comes down to this. Your ESOPs aren't just a line item on a benefits summary. They represent a real partnership, a real stake in the future success of your company. You've been given skin in the game. So the only question left is, now that you have the framework, how are you going to manage your stake?